morning to all you people scattered all over the planet. Right? Lovely. We're having a lovely summery day here in the Bay of Plenty, and I realize some of you are probably having a lovely late autumn dark freeze, but so you know the doors are open and the windows are open, and it's been pouring with rain on and off for the last week, and probably it's going to continue for another week. But we're just having a sunny break now. You must have brought all the sunshine with your Zooming. Thank you. So I would love to do something with you, and it's almost impossible because we have such a full room. I think there's an irony that it shouldn't be ironic because it seems to happen all the time. This is the last class of this series this year, and for that we have the biggest turnout. Maybe it's kind of safer or something like that, but because it's so crowded in here, to have 21 or 22 people or whatever in our little tiny living room, I'm kind of restricted in what I'd like to do right now, which is to do a kind of movement exercise with everyone. Of course, you people have lots of space, so you can stand up and do this, right? And today we're going to have a bit of a summary, maybe, of some of the themes that we've looked at this year. But I'd like to share with you a kind of goofy series of movements that I used to share with people a lot, and I haven't done it for ages, and for some reason it popped into my mind. Right? And so we could summarize the entire of the teaching without any kind of meaningful words whatsoever. This is the idea, and we can just do it for ourselves. Right? So I think we're going to do that instead of doing it standing up, which you would normally do, and in which case people are going to be whacking other people in the head with their arms as they're flying around. We're going to do it sitting down. Right? And there are 5 movements in this, and these 5 movements kind of remind us of the heart of Dharma practice. Because after all, the heart of Dharma from a universal perspective was the theme for this year. And so, first of all, we'll do the movements, and then we'll put some sound, not words, but sound to the movements. And then we'll do those a few times, and we'll just see what happens in this sardine tin. Right? So the first movement, right, is you're raising your arms up like this, right, and you're looking up, right? And everything is open. Imagine this is kind of like a great open chalice, right? There's a kind of an openness, and you're looking up, right? And then, I'm not going to explain anything yet. I'm just going to show you the movements. The second one is we move to this position.
Which is?
Oh, sorry, Kelvin. we bring our arms, it's hard to describe. So for Kelvin, we're bringing our arms down. Our first one is our arms are up above our head, wide open, and then they come down in front of our chest, bending our elbows and crossing our forearms, right, so that they're crossed at our chest heart, and our head is kind of bowing down a bit. And then the third movement, I'll remind you of these, you don't worry about remembering them all right now. The third movement, right, is, and this is the one where we're going to get some interesting phenomena in the room. So do it kind of gently and mindfully rather than exuberantly, otherwise we might have some ouches. Right? The third movement is we're going to begin to open our arms up, right, and our right arm comes up at a 45 degrees angle to the right, and our left comes down at 45 degrees to the left down, and we're looking up towards our finger. We're pointing our forefingers very pointy. pointing. Okay? And then from there, we bring our arms back into the center and we make a great circle in front of us. Okay, we've got a big circle. And then for the last movement, right, we spread our arms out as if we're offering to the world. Okay? And so this is, now you get it. This is a summation of the entire year. Right? Okay? So the heart of Dharma begins with a willingness to receive. So now I'm putting some kind of meaning behind the movements, right? So there's kind of, so imagine like something's pouring down, right? You don't know what, right? But you're open to receive whatever's coming your way, right? And then we move into this more kind of contained position with our arms crossed at the chest and the head down. We take what we receive and we take it in and we contemplate it and we feel the implications of what we are receiving. Okay? And out of this, a kind of sense of directedness in our life comes. She's going that way. Right? Right? And out of this kind of working with effortful direction, like I'm doing this practice, leads to a place of wholeness. Okay? So we've got this big wholeness, right? And you might fall into the hole. It's bottomless, right? And then the wholeness then opens up. This wholeness that we experience is the offering that we have to give to the world. Okay. And I'm going to speed the process up. I'm going to now add the sound. The sound is incredibly easy for people who speak English, right? Because it's just the vowel sounds. So it begins, it's very pointy. And so we'll now try and do this as a meditation. Right? I hope you can kind of remember the bits. Right? And the thing is that I'd like you to, we're going to take a bit of an exhalation, and then we're going to take a huge inhalation and raise our arms. Right? And we're going to do the entire 5 movements on a single breath. Right? Because you see, actually, these are not 5 stages of awakening. All 5 of them are inseparably blended with each other. Our offering is our receiving, is our directedness, is our realization of wholeness, is our integration. It's all of one piece, and so we want to kind of do this on one breath. And because we're all Buddhists here, we do it 3 times, right? Because it doesn't count if you don't do it 3 times, right? So 3 times here. Okay? So just, first of all, just sitting. And just feel your whole body, like as if you had a very fine thread going from the crown of your head, and it goes up into the sky, and it's just gently tugging upward. And so your kind of spine, you're having a very upright kind of posture. Okay? And we're breathing. present. And we're aspiring to make real this heart of Dharma. So exhaling and then inhaling. Just pause for a moment, just breathing, just resting, settling, deepening. And this time, the second time we do this, see if you can somehow feel the meaning behind these gestures. Like just tremendous opening of your being to receive. A deep, sensitive, skillful contemplating of this life that you're receiving, of this moment as it is arising. Right? A sense of greater clarity, of directedness coming out of that contemplation. Right? A deepening sense of wholeness. Right, of self and other, inner and outer, right? And a recognition that this is the fundamental offering that you have to offer to others. Exhaling, inhaling. And exhaling. Inhaling. If you'd like to join me in these words of aspiration, please do. Either vocally or silently within. We take refuge in wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging awareness. We take refuge in the full richness of here. We take refuge in the ever-present immediacy of now. Truth is all-pervading. It is the suchness of this moment, the thusness that we are. My refuge is to live within the truth. However innumerable beings are, I vow to meet them with kindness and interest. However inexhaustible the states of suffering are, I vow to touch them with patience and love. However immeasurable the dharmas are, I vow to explore them deeply and thoroughly. However incomparable the mystery of interbeing, I vow to surrender to it freely. From this day forth, with wisdom and compassion as my lamp and staff, I dedicate all my life energies to the welfare of all beings. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Since our last gathering on a month ago, I've spent some time doing something. I'm getting a little bit tired of it now. I'll be glad when it's finished. I've been reviewing my own classes. Right? And, oh, is that what we talked about? Right? And with the idea that perhaps we could, one, summarize the kind of pith of the year, and two, have a bit of time to see if there's any questions or observations or sharings, right, that people would like to make at this, our last gathering for this year. I decided it was too big to review. Watch the movies. But I would like to say a few things about a few salient points. I mean, we gave this year a title, a grand title, of living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging engagement, which seemed to morph from time to time to non-clinging responsiveness and sometimes non-clinging awareness. And so whatever suits you that day, I'm happy with that. Can't go too wrong. And we could say maybe, living with, and it's a bit like, Tarjan says, I'm going to tell you about living with Mary. I just want to sort of look at something here. It's like, if you're with someone, it has a certain quality about it. It's not an abstract concept. Living with my kids. This means something. Mm-hmm. We're not just saying living with wisdom, compassion, awareness, kind of some abstract kind of idea, and the living with part is not so important. Actually, the living with is all the importance. Okay? So this is, I'm offering this as a koan for all of us. Right? What would it be like to share a house with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging engagement? What would it be like to share a world with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging engagement? Right? And we could say, living with, but maybe we could even morph it a bit further, and maybe don't live with it, but what about living as wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging engagement? Not that wisdom is something else and you're finally learning how to live with wisdom. They're a bit difficult. We have our arguments. Compassion's a bit of a pain in the neck sometimes, right? But, we get on, we sort it out. We've got a relationship lawyer hired, right, to kind of...
Okay.
Somebody on Zoom has turned on their speaker. If you could just mute it, yeah. Right? So the sense of living with, living as, that this is wisdom. This is the inherent inquisitiveness and curiosity of your own knowing, right? Which is both precise and playful at the same time, right? This is living as that, right? Living as skillful means, as caring, right? Like living as that. This is kind of an overarching title. And then we had a little kind of subtitle, kind of, they're little add-ons, because Tarchin always liked to add on things. It's not very important. It's just the heart of Dharma from a universal perspective. Right? And I wonder, when we say the heart, I'm not really, it doesn't actually invoke for me too often, the picture of a human organ called a heart lub-dubbing and pumping blood around. Somehow that doesn't come into my mind straight off the bat when I say the heart of Dharma, right? The heart of the matter, right? But I do have a sense of like the heart is like the core of Dharma, right? And we spent a considerable amount of time just reminding ourselves of one of the myriad ways of understanding the word Dharma. Dhareti, to hold, to support, to carry, to cradle. I'm adding things, but it's sort of similar to the idea of the meaning there. And ma, right, mother, right? Dharma is that which mothers, supports, cradles, nurtures, right? And it is also recognizing that the core of Dharma is to recognize that we are both supported and cradled and nurtured whilst we are supporting and cradling and nurturing. Right? That just as the whole universe, in a way, could be seen as mothering your current present moment, so too, right, every other individual phenomena in the universe sees you as part of what's mothering their present moment. So the core, the core, the pith, the kind of central nub of Dharma is something which is, the way I'm describing it, is not something you just equate with, oh, you mean Buddhism. No, I mean, hopefully people who are studying Buddhism are utterly engaged in the heart of Dharma. But I'm talking about something which is universal, right? That the universe is supporting and nurturing and cradling the microorganisms in the soil. It's not just applying to humans who can have religions, right? To the trees, to the birds, to the creatures, to plate tectonics, to evolving planets, right? We are embedded in this. It's not a choice. It's not something we have to try desperately to do. I've got to get myself connected. I'm so disconnected. No, the experience of being disconnected only arises because it's being beautifully nourished by causes and conditions. Right? Dharma is all pervading. Right? So the heart of Dharma from a universal perspective, right? Not from the Buddhist perspective and not from Tarchin's perspective, but for all perspectives simultaneously. Right? Oh, you're my support. No, no, no. You're my support. Two people in a good relationship with each other could have a big argument over who's doing the supporting. How silly, right? You're my support. You're my support. Right? Right? So the heart of Dharma from a universal perspective. And from this point of view, I'm just touching on a few of the kind of phrases and little focal points that we've touched on during the year. With Stephen Batchelor translating some of Nagarjuna's teachings on the middle way, and beginning it with homage to Buddhas who teach contingency and ease fixation. Okay? The sense of, right? This is what we're learning here. This is universal, right? The more we look into the universe, we see that everything arises contingent with other things. Right? It doesn't matter where you look, you can only find this. Okay? And that kind of realization of the interconnectedness begins to ease the fixation, such as, I can't really define fixation, but I could give an illustration. An illustration of fixation is that in the face of this huge, complicated, interdependent universe, I gotta work really hard to be in control of it all. I mean, this kind of sense that somehow you're the boss, I'm the boss of my life, begins to kind of become a bit, not that it disappears, but it becomes a bit meaningless when we start to see true profundity and the vastness of this inter-being, inter-knowing dancing that we are, that is this Dharma. Dharma isn't something you practice, Dharma is what we are. And, when we compare it to where people put a lot of time of their lives into worrying about the future and kind of nagging themselves and berating themselves about the past and kind of one-upmanship games and all this kind of stuff, it's amazing how much of one's life can go into that as opposed to being just absolutely gobsmacked by the miracle of the fact that we exist in this extraordinary happening which has been going on for billions of years and we are part of. I'm going to pause now. I actually summarized the entire year in two or three sentences, so I can always pull that out later and kind of give you that. But just at this point, are there any areas that you would like to clarify a bit or go into a bit more deeply or share what feel like meaningful insights to you with our community of our green community of friends? We're green community of friends because, at the base, right, we're all fueled by green plants. And you are what you eat, so we're green. It's not politics. Silananda.
I often rewrite traditional texts in order to make them more meaningful to myself, and I ended one of the traditional prayers with, firmly grounded in the boundless mystery of the present moment, may I help all beings to cross the ocean of suffering. Actually confusion, which I think is a much better word, but I've been watching a lot of YouTube clips on subjects like emptiness, And it's quite clear that just looking around me in the planet at the moment, that many people do not have the groundedness to start with. That is probably the biggest hindrance to the awakening of all beings at a time of difficulty on the planet. But to ground, you actually have to ground to the boundless mystery of the present moment, because it's not a fixed thing, more a kind of sense like can't define. But this is, to me, is the profound teaching that, or awareness or understanding or realization that needs to be happening at a global level. The firmly grounded in the boundless mystery of the present moment. And by its very nature, it's insubstantial and impossible to pin down, but needs to be appreciated and felt at the deepest level. Perhaps you could comment on that, because it's one of the thousands of contradictions and the apparent contradictions in the Dharma.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, a contradiction. And, in a sense, rather than what you said as being a prescription of what everyone needs, if we listen to what you said as a statement of a deepening realization in your own being, then actually you're beginning to see something. And so at this point we might be able to embark on the true path of meditation, which is to, in a sense, you don't know what to do. How are you going to fix this up? Well, the only answer is going to come from the it. How are you going to fix up this non-seeing of suchness? Well, the only one who's got the wisdom to give an answer is suchness, right? And so it's as if, our meditation, still using all the skills that we had, for the people who haven't come to that, they're still busy accumulating experiences, accumulating techniques and methods and ways of dealing with problems. And their whole thrust of engagement with Dharma is just running out to accumulate better stuff and maybe get rid of and let go of not so good stuff. That's what Dharma's all about. And then after you've accumulated enough that you're no longer absolutely starving to death, you're maybe even burping a little bit and you're feeling a little overfull and maybe you've eaten too much, right? Then slowly the second stage starts to just naturally dawn, and you don't stop accumulating and then start integrating. It's more, they blend and merge together, and you're already doing it, but slowly the emphasis shifts from somehow I'm going to solve the problems of the world by accumulating more wisdom, compassion, non-clinging awareness, skill in this and that meditation and this knowledge and mastery of Prajnaparamita sutras. Rather than that, it's like our kind of emphasis goes to integrating the skills that we have accumulated and beginning to marvel at how they affect and influence each other. And so it doesn't really matter what skills you accumulate, they for sure are all affecting and influencing each other. So it really doesn't matter what you accumulate, but you can all come to a similar realization that everything's connected. I mean, it's so trite. That's why I make a silly voice over it. It's like, and yet that connectedness, that interdependency, is shunyata. It's a kind of a waste of time, I think, now for many, many beings, trying to kind of see the emptiness of everything. Right? Because it's just this is kind of a double struggle with it. What on earth does this mean, and what could it be, and so on. Whereas actually you could arrive at exactly the same place of freedom by seeing the codependency of everything. Right? Now this can make sense in our culture. Maybe there were other cultures where the emptiness of everything that was a sensible way of working. But I think in the world that we're living today, there's just a desperate need for us to have reverence and respect for all phenomena rather than taking it for granted and running roughshod over the things we don't like and the disasters we're causing. Right? We need to kind of begin. I don't want. If I have to go to emptiness for liberation, I'm not interested. I want my world with phenomena. Right? But what phenomena? It's ungraspable. It's kind of dancing, it's constantly shifting and moving and so on. And so we gradually, out of that integration, we begin to see this. See, with quotation marks around it. It starts to become more than just a conceptual idea. It starts to be something that we have a kind of felt sense confidence in and a competence in nourishing it. A confidence in it's like at that point you say, if I'm confident that it's all interconnected, that begins to hugely diminish my insane, desperate search for the answer from somewhere else. Because and now I'm getting a confidence there is nowhere else. This is it. Right? And there comes a confidence and a competence in being able to, this is coming back to the four efforts kind of thing, right? Of being able to nurture these things, right? With this, using the skills, the things you've accumulated, the life experience you've accumulated, right? And it's like moving from that, and as your life, which is all these life skills and the integration, interacts with other beings' life skills and their integration, it's all shifting and moving as we go, oh, it's really difficult hard to pin down. It's hard to pin down when you see yourself as an individual trying to pin down a whirling dervish. Right? But I wonder if a whirlpool feels like its whirlpoolness is hard to pin down. It's just what it is. It's whirling. Right? And so we begin to enter into, at that stage, all of that stuff before wasn't really meditation. We called it meditation, but we were kind of learning what the meditation is. The meditation is resting in the full richness of being with a kind of openness to learn, right? To be templated by it. To I template the universe templating me. We're kind of mutually templating each other. And this is very much not a meditation to try and get somewhere, but a meditation of familiarizing. Becoming so familiar, like all through, almost like deep into the bones of our being, so to speak. Right? So this is no longer a kind of arguable, debatable point. It's just as clear as the hand in front of your face. Right? It's just there. Right? And so this is called meditation. Right? It's also where we might say that Mahamudra begins. Right? It's also where Dzogchen begins the cultivation. Right? Where essence Zen begins. Right? Now we've finally discovered what the actual practice is. So the actual practice is familiarizing with being completely real. It's taken us decades to kind of learn what completely real might mean and imply at a kind of confident, competent kind of layer in our being. So these are a few thoughts in response to your observation. Yes.
So how do I kind of just looking for the word, sort of inoculate myself against using that view as a kind of spiritual materialism, where I'm actually really just still stuck in my egoic habitual patterns, but I'm in this sort of spiritual soup, and so I'm using a lot of the concepts to really just continue along with my egoic armoring.
Yes. That's life.
But
What-
I
what-
want to,
no, no,
I do
I-
want to get somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's the problem. Right? Like the I can't remember who it was that Rinpoche was quoting, Saint Augustine or someone like that, said what you are involved with carries you to God. Not what you're not yet involved with or what you should be involved with. It's what you are involved with. And so if you're involved with, just using your words, kind of egoic structures and so on, that's what's going to carry you to God. Right? And this kind of soup of Buddhist concepts, which you're kind of wrestling between the two, isn't, because it's not what you're as you say, people could use Buddhist practice as a kind of psychotherapy. But people could use psychotherapy as a Buddhist practice. Those two are quite different. Okay? When you look into and the key, like what you're involved with carries you to God, and now I'm going to add a Tarchin bit, because what you're involved with is what you are most passionately interested in. And you might say, well, I'm not really interested in that, but oh yeah? How come you're so involved with it? Like it's like it's like that, right? So in a, how can I put it? There are traditionally what we call gradual paths, right? And they're good. They're kind of supportive and so forth. And I'm referring to them all the time. But actually the gradual path is so gradual. The nature of a gradual path is you never get there. The only path where you get there is an already here path. It doesn't matter how long or short the gradual path is, you'll never get there. Because you're still kind of going, it's always around the next corner, it's all over the next hill. Right? Whereas the already here path, that's quite different. Right? Now what's already here? Going. I mean, it might sound like this, but what I'm trying to say is like to actually look at what we're truly deeply interested in, and then allow it to be a Buddha. And what does Buddhas do? They teach contingency. I mean, if we examine our whole life in terms of psychotherapeutic concepts and so on, right? We would see, interdependency big time. Right? Actually, we don't. Because we kind of locked ourselves out. Because instead of saying interdependent, we say codependent, and we turn it into something that's bad. Got to get rid of my codependence. You're just an enabler. We're all enabling each other in our addiction. We're all enablers. Right? And the plants are enabling me to give this class. Not intentionally. Well, maybe they are, but I'm kind of too dumb to see that. I see them doing it because it's what they are. And them doing what they are enables this class. Okay? And so, this is why a lot of what I've talked about this year And maybe when I do go through my 3 magic sentences, that might actually be saying something of an answer towards you. It's like when I talk about Dharma the heart of Dharma from a universal perspective, not the heart of Dharma from a psychotherapeutic perspective, not the heart of Dharma from a Buddhist perspective, but from a universal perspective. That what we're talking about is relevant to all sentient beings, all living beings, all beings participating in living. At that point, geologists can go, hey, we're part of that too. So I'd like to just kind of pause on that. Is there anyone in cyberspace who wanted to speak? I haven't been paying much attention to the screen, so I couldn't see if anyone was waving a hand or anything. A few weeks ago, sort of in the midst of just kind of thinking about how we might review the year in a meaningful way in a short bit of time, and I kind of jotted something down just as a flow of ideas, and I've kind of made it just vaguely grammatical, so it's not exactly trying to write definitive sentences. I wasn't trying to do that. There was just kind of a stream of ideas that were coming. And I'd like to just kind of read this to you, and we maybe kind of make a few observations and comments, and by means of this we might have a bit of a review of something of the year. Right. So I've titled this The Heart of Dharma Practice. Okay. It's kind of Dharma of that two-directional, kind of nurturing, supporting, mothering, nurturing that we are and that we do. And the heart of this as a practice, as an actual yoga, right? Just a sadhana. And so here it goes like this. Sit. And if you recall, back in the early part of the year, a number of times at the beginning of the classes I was talking about sitting down into the fullness of living that you are. Not sitting on a seat, not sitting in the sevenfold posture of Varochana. Well, you can if you like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm talking about sitting down into the fullness of living that you are whilst you're standing, whilst you're running, whilst you're talking and moving and so on. Like whatever it is, right? This is the beginning of the heart of prayer. If we don't do this, if we're not going to sit down, and the nice thing about the sitting point, rather than saying actually stand in it or walk in it or run in it or lie down in it, is because the sitting does hint at not moving around so much, right? So instead of like being in the fullness of living that you are for 2 seconds and then standing up and walking out and doing something else, sit down into the fullness of living that you are and stay there, right? At best, if you can sit in a full lotus into the fullness of living that you are. And this is just metaphoric for people who are yogis, right? That when you sit in the full lotus posture, right? You find that it's actually an incredibly stable posture. You can rock up on your knees and kind of waddle across the room on your knees when you're showing off to your other yogi friends, right? You can play with it, but actually it's not a great posture for moving around. And once you're locked into this kind of sit, right? You got to kind of unlock yourself before you can actually get up and move. So it's a kind of a good metaphor. We're going to sit down, right? And then feel your aspiration, right, to nourish sila, samadhi, and prajna in your life. Remember, we were talking about the Visuddhimagga and the inner tangle and the outer tangle. This generation is entangled in a tangle, right? And the Buddha was saying that the being who can, in a sense, sort out this conundrum is a being who is deeply engaged with sila, samadhi, and prajna. Is such a being who can sort this one out. And we went a little bit further and we started seeing how we could look at the 6 parami as being really just a kind of an enlargement of sila, samadhi, and prajna, right? As we have dana parami, generosity, wholesome relating, patience, skilled use of energy, all of those could come under sila parami. And then we had samadhi parami, and we had prajna parami, wisdom, right? And the interesting thing too is that we're going through all this kind of accumulation of these qualities, but it doesn't really take off until you get to the end and you've accumulated all the qualities, and then with wisdom, living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging awareness, you sit down into the fullness of your life and you contact your aspiration to nourish sila, samadhi, and prajna in your life and in others' lives, to nourish the 6 parami, right, throughout the 6 domains and dimensions of existence. I'm jumping all over the place here now. It's all right for the people who are with us through the year. It's going to be baffling for those that weren't with us. And we had a whole class, might have been the last class I gave, where I outlined kind of 6 domains and dimensions of kind of responsive relating. We talked about the emergent corporeal relating, right? We looked at cells, birthing, and so on. Intercorporeal, right? The kind of growing of tissues and organs and kind of all the parts of the body. And then subjective relating, right? Like the whole thing is an integrated whole relating, right? And intersubjective relating, like this me as a whole relating to the whole that is you, right? And then verbal relating, we're learning to speak, right? And this is like this relating, this inter-knowing, this inter-relating, right? Different domains and dimensions of knowing, right? And finally, story relating, Buddhist stuff or psychotherapeutic stuff. These are already complete stories, that and we inherit is the Hearn story, and you don't even know really my real story, but you do, because every time you meet me, you're getting it, right? And it's not the Namgyal story, and it's not the Buddha Dharma story. It's also the Hearn, Smith, Crafer, Bishop story, like lineages of ancestors, and right, the ecology of life. It's like stories within stories, and my family has quirky stories. Unlike your family. Right? Right? Concepts, stories, paradigms, right? Things, assumptions about the world that we take to be fundamentally unquestionable, because it's just kind of the world we live in, and yet it's just another story. Okay? So cultivating the 6 parami through these 6 domains and dimensions. What is generosity? Can I make sense of generosity at the emergent corporeal level, right? Molecules giving and receiving, right? The whole universe is a dance of dana parami, right? Neurotic mother with, right, struggling daughter. But actually they're built of emergent cellular systems, right? At the base of these beings, of this kind of psychotherapeutically described behavior, is dana parami. No dana parami, you don't have any neurotic beings. Well, that's why they say there's no dana, there's no sila, there's no samadhi, there's no form, there's no emptiness, there's no eye, there's no ear. Heart Sutra just says no nothing, right? But actually there's everything. And so we're feeling our way into like beginning to make sense, if you like, of these 6 parami, not just at an ego level, but at these 6 major dimensions of beingness. We're looking into them. We're curious about how it works, how the verbal level affects the verbal level of wholesome relating affects the emergent corporeal level of dana. Back and forth, we're just really exploring how this weaves together, and what's key to this is that we're curious. How does it work? Right? Now, at this second sentence now, that wasn't really a sentence, but that's the first sentence, right? The second sentence, armed with precepts, right? The 5 wholesome life trainings, the precepts in positive expression and negative expression. When in doubt, don't kill. When in doubt, don't try and escape all your problems with alcohol and drugs. When in doubt, right, don't lie and connive and backbite, and you can't go too wrong in not lying and conniving and backbiting and abusing. You can't go too wrong in not killing people. You can't go too wrong, and this is kind of low grade stuff, but sometimes we want it, this is absolutely in tune with Dharma, right? But then we might go to the precepts of these kind of life trainings as a positive expression. And so we start to train ourselves to support and appreciate the lives of all living beings and live with a sensitive and responsible awareness for the whole ecology of life. And this is percolating through the 6 domains and dimensions of being. It's reflected through the 6 parami. The whole thing it's actually just, it's very ordinary. It's not a weird Tibetan deity on a tonka somewhere. This is just stuff that's happening here in New Zealand. I'm sorry, those of you that are in Brazil or Canada, it doesn't happen for you. It's like you're all living in a tonka. It's like that we get to a point where we go, life is too precarious, right? I mean, surely we don't have to emphasize this too much, right? To see that we're all aware that they're just massive problems which are just hovering over life on Earth, about to drop on our heads. They're in a slow motion drop. It's all happening already, right? And I don't know that I really want to. I want to do something that's meaningful, right? Not something that's kind of nice and theoretical, but it takes decades of life and full body teenage health. Right? I've lost it. If that was the requirement, I'm finished. Armed with precepts, realizing bodhisattva eco-sattva-ship, guided by the bodhisattva vow. And recall I was talking about how if we can begin to get a sense, we've got this Buddhist concept of the bodhisattva, the awakening being, but I shared with you this other way of looking at maybe the same thing. For me, I don't have any trouble with them being interchangeable, and talk about an eco-sattva, right? And just as a kind of a reminder that we're embedded in this kind of extraordinary multidimensional ecology of being, right? And we are strengthened in our eco-sattva-ship, right? Are you, I can ask each one of you the same question, right? Are you, and then just fill in your name. Is that who you are? Right? Or are you eco-sattva in action? Are you bodhisattva in action? You say, well, from a certain limited perspective, I'm a Hearn, with a dappling of Smith and Bishop and Crafer, right? But that's not the whole story of what's needed to make this experience. Right? And you see, there's a budding, there's a bodhisattva, there's a flowering of life, of mystery. Right? This kind of ecology of life, this ecosattva. And there's the bodhisattva vow, right? Is to, in a sense, support our living a life of bodhisattvaship. You know, it's not just something you do on Sundays and then the rest of the week you run around doing something different. I mean, you can, but it's not yet a ship. It's a ship with a big hole in it. It's 6/7 hole. I don't mean WH, I mean there's a big hole in it. You know, you're sinking. Right? You've got to fill in the holes. So armed with precepts, realizing bodhisattva, ecosattva-ship, guided by the bodhisattva vow, balancing samatha and vipassana, right? Perhaps as guided by the essential practice that we talked about. Refining our experience with the 5 supports: smiling, breathing, present, appreciating, offering. Living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging engagement. Nurturing this in every aspect of our daily living, right? Armed with precepts. That they're useful. You know, they're kind of, they give us a sense. Imagine you're sent off into a kind of dangerous territory with no kind of equipment to look after yourself or defend yourself or anything. You want to be armed, right? Right? With some kind of life supportive equipment. It doesn't have to be guns and bombs. It could be scuba tanks if you're going underwater. You know, but it could be just like armed with patience and clarity and interest and wonderment. Right? Realizing ecosattva-ship, guided by the bodhisattva vow. Right? Balancing samatha and vipassana, right? Calm abiding and clear discernment, right? Using the what I've called those verses, if you like, from the essential practice, in the natural flow of whatever is occurring. Cultivate a continuity of profoundly nourishing ease, suffused with serene alertness and vivid discernment, right? In the natural flow of this kind of egoic complexity, cultivate, right, a continuity of profoundly nourishing ease. How do you do it? Well, you adjust this bit. You don't replace it with Buddhist stuff. You make it work. You know, this is how you move to God, right? Suffused with serene alertness and vivid discernment, whether walking, sitting, standing, or lying down. Allow everything to rest in its own place, in the full richness of being that it is. Could we meet each other? You know, what would it mean for all of me to be present with and for all of you? Do we meet other beings just in the ordinary ego business of our life, right? Appreciating that there is a full richness of being there, which you don't know what it is, but at least you know it's there, which changes your relationship with that being entirely. If you compare it with, this being has no full richness of being, this being's just a jerk, this being's a problem, right? And I know it. You know, this actually, knowledge isn't all it's cut out to be. You know, maybe it's better not to know what they are, but to kind of have a confidence that there's more to them than meets the eye, so to speak, which might actually then kind of naturally flow through to being open to kind of allow their best qualities to manifest rather than trying to control them and make them do something else. What are their best qualities, right? And well, maybe it's got something to do with the 6 parami. Maybe this truly is the heart of Dharma. It's not just you as a Dharma practitioner. Everyone is rooted in Dana, is rooted in wholesome relating. Everyone has to live with patience, right? with the timing, with an accepting of the timings of others, and so forth. Refining with the 5 supports. It doesn't have to be in this order. It's just sort of what popped into my mind, right? So we're smiling. This is from this Nectar of Naturalness book. Smiling, breathing, present, appreciating, offering, whilst cultivating dana, whilst deepening the essential practice. Smiling, breathing, present, appreciating, offering, whilst cultivating samadhi or virya parami, or right, whatever it is. Living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging engagement, and nurturing this, right? Armed with precepts, working with the bodhisattva vow, balancing samatha, vipassana, refining with the 5 supports, living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging awareness, nurturing this in every aspect of our daily living, we attune to universal Dharma. This is how we attune to universal Dharma. This nectar of naturalness, this innate grace of Mahamudra. And in doing so, we become a presence of strength, support, and blessing for all that we meet. And this is my attempt to just make a kind of reminder sentence for the year. Let's just pause for a moment. Right? And sit down into the fullness of living that you are right now. And in this fullness of living, for sure, there are tides of movement, which we sometimes call breathing. Absolutely, for sure. If it's not there, you're not listening to the class. Corpses don't pay a lot of attention. So we're sitting down into the fullness of here, wherever it is. In your flat in Sao Paulo, right? In your living room in Ottawa, right? In the living room at Tarchin and Mary's place at 9 Windridge. You know, you're just sitting down into this. And it's a thunderous experience. And the birds think it's pretty neat too. And somebody else is celebrating by mowing the lawns. And we're breathing. We're just feeling the kind of the opening of our organism and the kind of gathering. It's kind of a pulsation like a jellyfish. You're breathing with your legs, you're breathing with your belly, breathing with your throat, with your head, with your hair, with your fingernails. The whole of your being, right, is ebbing and flowing in some slight reverberation of our exchange with the photosynthesizing world. And you might feel a very subtle, gentle opening happening. And you might find yourself smiling a bit more deeply. Because there's something good about it. It's just kind of natural to, how did I forget? Right? It's like, we're smiling, we're breathing, and we're present. This presence. We're present if we're busy worrying about something, and we're present if we're blissful. Present isn't an option. Breathing is not an option. And at a very deep level of being, welcoming, sugatoing is not an option. It's what our molecules do. It's what our cells are doing. They're holding us together. Hi, great, you want to dance? Smiling, breathing, present. And flowing through all of this is a kind of deepening sense of appreciation of the mystery of this extraordinarily simple moment of just sitting down into the fullness and opening. Recognizing that this present existence, which is always what you are, you're always your present existence. It's the only offering that you have to offer. And it's the offering that you are offering, whether you like it or not. Okay? I'm being shifted and changed by your presence. We can have a lot of our time in the name of Dharma can be devoted to analysis. We can kind of analyze what's going on, and we can sort of, and that's wonderful. It's absolutely necessary, actually. And we begin to see the detail of the interbeingness, the interconnectedness, the interdependency, the dance. Right? But if we just put most of our effort into analysis forever, we might never get round to just settling into and being this dance which our analysis is revealing. And so our meditation practice, although of just sitting down into the simplicity of this fullness of now, right? And kind of familiarizing with the art of resting and being refreshed by this. It's refreshing. Our meditation is really, we could say that our meditation is a kind of exercise in refreshment. If you don't feel refreshed, then we say, well, you're not really meditating. You're still struggling to discover what the meditation is, because the real meditation is the resting in refreshment. Ever fresh. To refresh. Yeshe. Spontaneously present, ever fresh awareness. Right? It's just, right? Now all of this has been getting terribly complicated. So I want to simplify the whole thing even further. Right? And I'm going to borrow from, I think my understanding is that one of the earlier expressions of this came from Padmasambhava, who is one of the great teachers instrumental in bringing tantric teachings to Tibet. And there's a kind of a phrase, a statement, if you like, which is considered by many to be terribly profound. Right? And it is descend with the view and ascend with the conduct. And I'd like to just kind of elaborate it a little bit. right? Descend with the view of interconnectedness, interdependency, right? And ascend with the conduct of attentive caring. Okay? And this, to really understand this kind of suggestion coming from Padmasambhava, you do have to realize that it's mountainous in Tibet. I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? You're in the Himalayas, right? And when you say view, the view, you always have this sense it's just an ordinary lived experience that people climb hills, and when they get up onto the top of the hill or on top of the mountain, they have a bigger view, right? You get this kind of thing, right? And then you descend into the valley, and your view shrinks. When you're up top, you can see miles and miles and miles, but you don't see the person who's down there herding a yak, right? There's a little black dot in the far distance. But when you come down, you see the person there, and you're in the detail, and you don't see the big picture, right? So actually, I would say descend with a view that is all embracing, right? Like in a sense, like this. Bring it down into the valley of your life. Bring it down into the psychotherapeutic language of the Dharma, right? Bring it down into the detail of your living. One's view of things is all embracing, right? And ascend with the conduct of attentive caring. Not just caring, but like paying attention and caring. And actually through paying attention and caring to the detail, we ascend. There's down in, I was thinking to bring it up and somehow we didn't get round to it, but down in the hut down below, if any of you happen to go down there, you can look and see there's a tanka on the wall. Tanka is a kind of Tibetan painting. And it's a mandala of Vajrayogini. And the Vajrayogini is this kind of flamboyant dancing female figure, right? Except that in this is the painting's about this big, right? And the Vajrayogini is only so small you can hardly even, a lot of people have to be told it's Vajrayogini, otherwise they wouldn't know. And what you see is what's called the Dharma Bhava triangle, or the Seal of Solomon, the cross triangles. So you have a triangle here, right? You got the equilateral triangle, and then you got another equilateral triangle going down. So you get a sense of something ascending and descending simultaneously, right? And in the middle of this descending with a view that is all embracing and ascending with attentive caring, you dance. Right? This is where the dance of your life. This is the dancing of your life. It's actually a very simple tanka. If you have time, go and have a look at it. It doesn't have tons of deities all over it or anything. It's just two big red triangles passing through each other. Bit of flames all over the lot, right? Because it's dynamic, right? And it's energizing, right? And so, although I didn't talk about this during the year, I think this is the review of the year. Descend with a view that is all embracing. Okay? That's right? And so in other words, come down into the valley of your life, into the detail of your life, with a view that's all embracing. Can we do this? Remind yourself, it's there. It's like the view, all embracing. Come on, all embracing. Yeah. Right? It's like this opening. It's like very intellectual. It's all embracing and so on. It's like if you can't feel the Dharma in your body, you don't know anything about Dharma. Right? Because if you can't feel what nourishes and supports and holds you and mothers you in your body, you're stuffed. And if you don't allow your body to nourish and support and hold others, you're stuffed. Right? And I wonder if these two aspects of Dharma are the two triangles. And they meet in the very center of the mandala as this dancing female figure, birthing, gestating the world continuously. And so this is our kind of summation for the year. And ascending with conduct, with behavior that is attentive and caring. Simple. Right? And I think sometimes I find it useful occasionally to have these almost like little Buddhist sound bites. And they kind of, at the beginning maybe I try and tell myself, oh, I got to remember to tell myself that. And then of course every time I need it, the fact that I need it means I don't remember to tell myself. You know, Rinpoche used to give me all these brilliant practices to deal with my problems in the early days. And the problem with it is they worked all the time, if only I remembered to do them. So when I was filled with enthusiasm from the class or from the instruction and so on, it worked perfectly. You know, I do metta bhavana and I was feeling loving and there was no anger in my being. But when I was angry, I totally forgot about practicing metta bhavana. You know, it's kind of like, and gradually I began to realize it was great advice, but it was all pretty useless. Because I wasn't I wasn't using it. Okay? But sometimes a little sound bite can come in. I'm calling it a sound bite. You know, a little idea bite can come in, and it can be just our wisdom speaking. Right? And it's almost like, thank you. How did I forget? You know, it's kind of like a kind of a feeling like this. And you know, probably from my perspective, I think the most profound thing that we can do in terms of helping others come to this is to be an example of this awakening in action. I can't see any other way. Anything else I say seems to fall into contradictions and problems. Yeah. What we got to do is leave the oil in the ground. Right? Simple. So we do. Okay. Imagine we all decide to leave all the oil in the ground. Right? All of a sudden, no internal combustion engines work. There's no food in the shops. People starve to death. Right? There's kind of no the hospitals break down. The whole thing falls apart. Right? Even samsara is interdependent. You can't kind of stop being you know, somebody said like trying to fix the problems of the world was like trying to rebuild an airplane while it was still flying. So what we can do though is we can be an example to others, right? And there's a kind of an increasing groundedness and stability in this. And this kind of idea of confidence and competence, which I've talked about on and off throughout the year, is tremendously important. We're looking at the kind of inner felt sense that's growing, right? A confidence that living this way is meaningful, because if I doubt it's meaningful, then maybe I'm looking for something else. And a competence, right? An increasing competence of the skills to nourish it and to kind of encourage it in ourselves. And then, you know, naturally that encourages it in others, because what we're talking about is universal Dharma, and it applies to every living creature. It's very beautiful that way, actually. And it's much too simple for the complexities of samsaric minds to kind of grasp, because they're looking for some kind of really complicated explanation of how the universe works. But the key is something seemingly so simple that we can't even acknowledge that it's of value. And that's why people need to have pointing out instructions, and after you've kind of realized the nature of mind, then you have to have the Lama point out the nature of mind. You've got to realize it first to be realized by the wise, each for themselves. But you're not quite confident, and you're not quite competent about it, and it's kind of, maybe I'm on the right track. Can I give that confidence and competence to someone else? Can I share it with someone else? Can I live with another being in a way that increases their true wholesome confidence and competence? I think this has got something to do with living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging engagement. And is truly the heart of Dharma, right? In a kind of universal perspective. I'd like to finish our time together here by doing something which I don't do very often. In fact, I very rarely do. And so I'm not doing it in any kind of, it's a bit of a, I'm giving it as an offering. And how you receive it, it's going to be totally up to you. You don't have a choice. How you receive it depends on how you are at this moment. That's what I mean. You know what I mean? But nevertheless, I would like to offer it. And I think that there is the thing that I don't emphasize. I used to, in the very early days of teaching, and we're talking about multiple decades ago, I did. And I'd go around getting people to, take precepts and bodhisattva vows, and it's like important to pledge to do this, that, and the other, and you swear up and down you're going to do the right thing and not do the wrong thing and all that kind of stuff. And I saw that in doing that, I seemed to be aiding and abetting people to feel guilty. I mean, there'd be a few people who could benefit by this, but an awful lot of people, it just led to, they didn't really do it. They just felt guilty for not doing it. And it was very increasingly clear to me that I wasn't really that interested in going around trying to kind of supercharge people's guilt. Because basically it was painful. It's painful for me to relate to you when you come along and you're just manifesting feeling totally guilty and miserable and incompetent. I like relating to you when you're feeling joyful and talented and full of interesting things and so on. I mean, it's much more pleasurable for me. So it's purely out of selfish interest, as the Dalai Lama said, enlightened self-interest. We're kind of kind to each other for our own benefit. Okay? And in the Buddhist tradition, there is a, people would take ordination, and the ordination would be like a kind of a public acknowledgement of an aspiration, right? It's like to sort of state publicly, I aspire to this, because somehow it makes a difference saying it publicly and saying it privately, because when you're private you can kind of go, well, nobody knows I did it, so it's okay, I can do anything I like, so it's kind of like got this edge to it, it feels like commitment and so on. But as Rinpoche once said, nobody awakens if the Dharma practice for them is a hobby. Right? You awaken out of sheer desperation. Right? You awaken because it supports survival. If it's not at that level, you're not going to go here. This is way too kind of nebulous and vast and all-encompassing. Right? It's better just to become rich and famous. A lot easier. Right? And so what I would like to do is to read for you a request. Okay? And traditionally you would request to receive ordination. Doesn't mean you do. You're just expressing your aspiration to. Right? And this is a request for samanera ordination, a layperson ordination, right? Not a monk, not a nun, right? It's a person who's living in an ordinary kind of complex life. Right? And I would like to read this for you 3 times. Right? And the first time I'd like you just to think about it. Think, conceptualize about it, right? Think, what does it mean? Does this got any relevance to me? And so forth. And I might make a few comments as I go through the first reading. And then the second time, right, I'm going to invite people to kind of mentally join me. If you feel moved in your own being to make this kind of declaration in a way that feels meaningful, not out loud, right, but in your own being. And then the third time, again, the same thing, but this time not even verbalizing anything, but just kind of feeling this flowering in the core of your heart. Take this to heart. Right? I was a monk for 12 years, and there was a lot of benefit in living that way for me. Right? In that I was kind of constrained, if you like, by my own sense of aspiration and shame. Aspiration to live this way and shame for kind of not living this way. Right? And it helped to shape the being I am today. Right? And although I let go of the ordination vows decades ago, a lot of the kind of what I think of as almost like monkly attitudes and behaviors have stayed with me all the way through. I've been tired by it, like I was in the dye vat for so long, right, that I came out completely colored with this other color, and it doesn't matter how much I've tried to wash it off, it's still there. So let me read these, right? This is not a translation of a Sanskrit text or anything. This is Tarchin's words for Westerners who are approaching and aspiring, at least from time to time, to universal Dharma. Okay? And it goes like this. In the presence of everyone that I value, a vast ecology of life unfolding, a great river of ancestral talents flowing forth in generations of beings yet to come, kind of flows through me out into the future. An immeasurable ocean of Dharma teachings and teachers, right? Like kind of hints and aspirations and nudges in the direction of health and well-being and integration, right? In the presence of all these beings that I value, can I feel this, right? The kind of ecological ground of being, the ancestral ground of being, the kind of inspirational ground of being. Having reflected deeply on this mystery of life and living that we are, I wish to publicly affirm with the entire of my being my great heartfelt aspiration and intent to cultivate a life of true refuge, to use the Bodhisattva vow and the 6 paramita as a guide in all that I do, and to make the precepts in traditional and positive expression a guiding framework for all the activities of my body, speech, and mind. It's just a guiding framework, right? It's like this, right? To cultivate true refuge, right? To take refuge in the full richness of here, the ever-present immediacy of now, this suchness that we are, this thusness that is, right? This true refuge, right? to use the Bodhisattva vow to meet beings with kindness and interest, to touch difficulties with patience and love, to explore the innumerable manifestations of mothering, supporting, and holding Dharma. Right? There's just innumerable ways of connecting and everything throughout the universe, and to surrender into this mystery of interbeing, interknowing, right? Bodhisattva vow. And the 6 paramita: generosity, wholesome relating, patience, skilled use of energy, continuity of caring and inquiry, profound understanding. Using these as a guide in all that I do, and to make the precepts in traditional and positive expression, both. The traditional is more negative expression, I won't do this. Positive is, I will do this. To take them as a guiding framework. A guiding framework. A general, when in doubt, these are good guides. Right? If you're really clear, you don't need this, you're clear. Right? In the presence of everyone, this I pledge. And so I'd like to read this just through and invite any of you, for some of you maybe you're just, you are finding it interesting to contemplate the meaning and whether this has relevance to you in your life, continue to do so. Right? For some of you, you may feel that somehow this is speaking to you in a deep way, and see if you can feel the presence of, you're in the presence of everyone that you value. In the ordination you imagine, I remember once Rinpoche giving this ordination years ago, and he put on his robes and everything, and he looked all very kind of formal and everything, and he said to the people who were being ordained, you should feel you're in the presence of the Buddha, not me. But these robes are symbolizing this, is kind of awakening this for this. I want you to look out the window and see the green plants and hear the birds and feel the earth underneath this building that we're sitting on, right? This ecology of life, right? In the presence of this. It's not a concept, it's can I feel in the presence of this, in the presence of kind of ancestral talents for beauty and wonderment, and talents for grumpiness and suspicion and distrust, and all these things flowing through family lineages, and they flow into me and they flow out of me into future family, into my kids and my grandkids, all the beings that I meet, right? And in the presence of all the beings who have been sources of inspiration, mentorship, right, like moving me in the direction of deepening understanding of Dharma. Right? In the presence of everyone that I value, a vast ecology of life and living, a great river of ancestral talents flowing forth in generations of beings yet to come, an immeasurable ocean of Dharma teachings, in the presence of everyone that I value, having reflected deeply on this mystery of life and living that we are. I aspire to publicly affirm with the entire of my being, right? That's the publicness of it. With your body, other people can see your body. You don't turn it on or turn it off, right? With the entire of my being. My great heartfelt aspiration and intent to cultivate a life of true refuge. To use the Bodhisattva vow and the 6 paramita as a guide in all that I do. To make the precepts in traditional and positive expression a guiding framework for all the activities of my body, speech, and mind. In the presence of everyone, this I pledge. It's kind of like some kind of increasing firmness in our being to move with profound goodness. And this last reading, right, just allow the words to kind of almost like whispering in your heart and reverberating out through the entire of your beingness. In the presence of everyone that I value, a vast ecology of life unfolding, a great river of ancestral talents flowing forth in generations of beings yet to come, an immeasurable ocean of Dharma teachings. Having reflected deeply on this mystery of life and living that we are, I wish to publicly affirm with the entire of my being my great heartfelt aspiration and intent to cultivate a life of true refuge, to use the Bodhisattva vow and the six paramita as a guide in all that I do, and to make the precepts in traditional and positive expression a guiding framework for all the activities of my body, speech, and mind. In the presence of everyone. This I pledge. Sadhu. Part of my time in reviewing these talks was also to jot down a few kind of headings and kind of salient parts. And so in the next week or two, I hope to put this up on the Green Dharma Treasury, so that if any of you wanted to refer again to, so I think some of the classes were okay. They were kind of, I think, maybe useful, and they probably deserve to be heard more than once. But you may find it useful to have these references to be able to go more quickly to what it is you're looking for, rather than just having to listen to hours and hours of Tarzan nattering on to get to the part that you were interested in. And also I've put down like where I've mentioned books and various teachings and so on. I've listed them at the bottom so that you can look them up if you want, or references of where to find them and that kind of stuff. And also I've written in this a suggestion that these classes could be used as a kind of a very loose guiding framework for a kind of long-term personal study retreat. And you can listen to a little bit and then don't listen to any more, right? And put it into practice. Come back, listen to a bit more, come back, and so working with it. And this is why I'm pleased to actually post this up, because I think it could have some use that way. I'd like to thank you all for coming and attending. Lots of people have actually managed to come to almost everything, which is astonishing. And the years, I didn't have a plan for this at the beginning of the year, but I had a vague idea that the general direction would unfold well, and generally speaking, I feel it did. Right? And I couldn't have done this without you. Right? We do this together, the interbeingness of our lives and living, and we see if we can feeling our way. Some people are, deeply immersed in Buddhist practices and even cultural aspects, and some beings not at all, and some beings are busy with families, and some beings are sort of more solitary types, and we've got all kinds of people here, right? And yet I think that we've looked at an approach to Dharma which is definitely in the direction of universality. And I think that it has a kind of a potential to resonate with beings from all kinds of backgrounds. And it doesn't mean don't be Buddhist. Buddhism has been hugely empowering and inspiring in my life, and you take the Buddhism out of Tarshan, and Tarshan would be a different person. Probably be an Eric. but you know, it's like it doesn't. That's not the key. The key is something of a heart, of a real genuine heart to live well and share with others. And with this in mind, I'd like to just conclude by reading a prayer that I wrote years ago, and it continuously touches me. And I'd like to, and it will be familiar to many of you, but I'd like to read it yet again. And I called it the Circle of Blessings. Right? I pray to the wetlands. I pray to the deserts. Include me in your embrace. I pray to the rainforests, to the grasslands, to the tundra and boreal forests. Bless our families with health, curiosity, and great compassion. I pray to the coral reefs, to the tidal fringes, to estuaries, deltas, benthic depths, and the great oceanic empty zones. Be firm in the midst of our extending human madness. I pray to the volcanic hot zones and the boiling mud pools, to icy caps and mountain peaks, to rolling hill country, rills and rivers, creeks and braided waterways. Pray, care for this adolescent tribe. Heal our rambunctious self-infatuation, our tunnel vision, and above all, our blinkered pride. I pray to the living wind and rain, to the sun, moon, planets, and stars, all my cousins, near and far. Pray, wrap us in your solicitude. My eyes are moist. This vulnerable, stripped bareness, remembering communion deep and wide. How should we name it? Joy? Sadness? Frustration? Awe? Confusion? Reverence? Gratitude? Love? We belong with each other. Feeling your feeling, sensing your sensing. We are woven intimacies through and through. We are alive. We are blessed. We are spacious and luminous. We gaze at stars and empty vastness and feel our fluid bones, a great symphonic cry of longing and joy, a dancing of solidity, flux and knowing, histories revealing, stories concealing. I care for you all. Each and every part and every moment of every part, all included. Nothing ignored. We are life, praying with life, to life, for life, in all its abundance. We are a circle of blessing. We are suchness beyond words. And just inviting everyone to sit quietly for a moment and just feel anything that might be stirring in the heart of your being. And let that expand out and consciously share with everyone, inner, outer, imagined, right? Whatever has been positive, whatever has been helpful, whatever has been useful in our times together this year. And may it continue to flower and blossom and inspire the easing of fixation and the appreciation of contingency within ourselves and everyone that we meet. May the day be well, and the night be well, and the midday hours bring happiness too. May both day and night always be well. By the blessing of the Triple Gem, may all be auspicious. Sarva Mangalam, Sarva Mangalam, Sarva Mangalam. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone who's been joining us from a distance. May all be well.